There was no template for success. There was no template for making music. There was no template for how to make a party or run a party. It was just how you felt at the time by whatever you felt that you could basically give. It's all about giving. It was never about taking at all. And for me, it's never about taking. And I've always said to myself, if I get paid to do anything, it's an absolute bonus. Thank you very much. If you've enjoyed yourself and you want to show me some gratitude by paying me, and then thank you. I mean, it's the same for race car drivers, it's the same for horse racers, it's the same for tennis players, it's the same for any profession. Footballers get 10 times more money than God, But if he kicks that goal the ball in the goal at that particular time, and you paid your season ticket subscription, and that's all you want to see happen, you're more than happy to go, that's why I pay my season ticket. So for me, the drive has never been about what I can get out of it. It's what I can give to it, to what I get out of it. And I think that's, if there's a secret to success for me, I think it's always been about that, because I've never chased anything.
You're listening to the Mission Makers Show, a podcast that inspires humans to get into the mindset of success. My name's Farah Nanji, and I'm the founder of a business in the motorsports industry that explores leadership lessons from things like Formula One. I'm also a DJ and music producer in the underground electronic scene, and a public speaker on key topics like resilience, building high-performance teams, overcoming learning difficulties, and stimulating creativity. And to tie it all together, I love writing thought-provoking content as a journalist for these industries which are so unique in themselves. On this show, I'm sitting down with some of the most inspiring and driven people I've met around the world to talk about their processes, their failures, the lessons they've learned, and how they are truly making an impact for this world. So guys, we are back for season 2 of the Mission Makers podcast, and I am so excited to share that our first episode is with none other than the world famous DJ and drag racer Carl Cox. It's been really hard staying quiet about this episode, but as someone who's been one of the founding fathers of electronic music since the 90s, he is a man that needs absolutely no introduction. 4 decades on, and his passion, his humility and his hunger shines through so strongly in this episode, and it's easy to see why he's so loved by millions of people around this world. He's genuinely a legend, and our conversation was so good that we didn't stop talking for 2 hours. And so I have to say a huge thank you to him for being so generous with his time, and as a result we've decided to make this a 2-part special. In this episode, we discuss the difficult decision Carl had to make early on in his life between motorsports or music, the defining moments in his career, and how he reads energy, amongst other things. Carl, thank you so much for joining us today on Mission Makers. We are so honoured to have you on the show. How is your day going today? Or should I say your evening? I think you're currently in Australia, correct?
Yeah, Melbourne, Australia. We're in the midst of our summer here now. We had a cracker day today, up to I think 27 or 28 degrees. I know you guys don't want to hear that, sun shining, and the evening, it's just the sun's only just starting to go down now, and the heat, as you can tell, I'm still sweating a little bit here, but it's nice here at the moment. Melbourne kind of weather goes up and down, in the end of the day, but when it's a good day, it's really nice. And but unfortunately, we're still on lockdown at the moment. We had a 5-day lockdown, so we can go 5Ks around where we live, but we can't go out, cruising, go to a restaurant, we can't do any of that stuff. So all the stuff we're doing here is in my garden. And to get fresh air and all that sort of stuff. It's not too bad here, to be honest. It's actually it's quite something of which we've been through. Obviously, when we first got locked down for 5 months, and that was through the winter. So whatever you guys are going through, we've been through that to get to this end of now being able to enjoy it. But at 12 o'clock tonight, they're going to lift the lockdown, and we can get back into just basically living a kind of, hopefully, a COVID-free life here. They seem to have got on top of it at the moment right now.
That's interesting. So do you have some plans for this evening?
Not really, no. We'll wait till 12 o'clock comes. I'll fall asleep, but wake up in the morning and be free. So yeah, I'm going to go run naked down the road or something. I don't celebrate.
You had a gig recently, didn't you? I saw in Australia. Is that right?
Yep, it was my first live performance party from a DJ's point of view that I have done since this pandemic. The venue actually has turned itself into a COVID-free venue. So where we DJ from, obviously, well, more than 1 or 2 meters away from everybody. Everyone behind us, all the staff have to wear masks. But the performers don't have to if you're moving around a lot. And then all the public, they have their own little kind of pod areas between, and the tables between 6 and 10. And in each individual pod basically gets splayed out across the grounds of where you would normally dance. But you can still dance, you can still get up and have a good time, but you're kind of put into different zones. But it didn't really deter the atmosphere that much, because you can still get up, you can still social distance, and you can still have a good time. Everyone doesn't have to wear a mask. If you're open air, you don't need to wear them. It's mandatory to have a mask if you're going into a supermarket or you're going to a petrol station, restaurant, respectively. But apart from that, you can walk around quite freely without wearing masks. Starts at 2:00 and finishes at, well, we finished at 9:00. Yeah, we're nice and early. I like the early ones.
That's lovely. Did it feel quite liberating to kind of be back, in front of people?
Yeah, you have no idea what it felt like to. I mean, my whole life existence has been about, playing my music to people and people reacting and enjoying the music that I'm playing, and so not to be able to do that, I mean, one day I'll say, right, I'm done, I'll walk away and it's fine. But at this particular moment in time, I'm not ready to do that yet, and the pandemic hasn't enabled me to do that. To be able to perform in front of people. So you can imagine the first time I went to go and do it, and I got out there, and the people were cheering and happy, and just like, after the first record, I was just like and I just didn't want to let it go. It was just wonderful to be able to get back to performing again in such a way.
That's amazing. So talking about your childhood, I know that your love of music, of course, started at an early age, and this saw you playing music often in the playground. Could you ever have imagined it would have gotten this big for you?
No, not really. I mean, I was just, the thing was about my growing up is that my family, my mum and dad were born in Barbados, and God bless their souls, they're not with us anymore. But, there was always love in the family for music. And my dad was always playing music in the house. My mum really enjoyed it, and she shared the music with her friends. And, any given moment, there'd be like a party downstairs in the front room. They'd all be smoking cigarettes, drinking wine, and having rum punch and all sorts of things. And I was only like, 7, 8 years old. And I could hear this fracas going on downstairs, listening to James Brown, Get Up Off of That Thing, or I'm Not Gonna Bump No More with It, Big Fat Woman, and all sorts of records that I was hearing. I'm just like, So I went, I got up out of bed one night, and I stood in the banisters, and I was kind of looking down, and my mum and dad's friends are getting down, drinking, having a good time. And my dad was like, right, go to your room, go to bed, or come downstairs, put these records on, and don't move until we tell you. So I was like, go to bed or play records. I'm going to play some records of my dad's records collection, and that's what it was. That's what it was like. And the player was a single box player with a single mono speaker in it, and it basically, you loaded up the 45-inch singles, 10 of them, and you selected the records how they were going to land and play. So I was completely selecting music from a very, very early age to create the mood of where you took people. So you had to understand the music you was playing to begin with, and as I was going along, I would go record shopping with my father, and and at the time he was basically buying soul music, rhythm and blues, country and western, a bit of rock and roll. He was very eclectic in his sound, and reggae and soca music or calypso music from the islands of Barbados. So we had a really wide, varied sound of what my mum and dad were listening to. But I was exposed to that right from the beginning. So I think it was almost like a destiny that I ended up being where I am in my life today. But I had to basically choose that crossroads at some point, because DJs, it's a cottage industry now for DJs. But at that particular time, the only DJs that were reaching out to anybody was radio DJs, and you had to have a voice for radio, or you had to have that kind of flair about who you was initially about getting the music, getting yourself across to the people with the music that you selected. And I never saw myself as that person, but I would always listen to the radio to be inspired by it. And if I could find a station that was playing the music that spoke to me, and then I would listen to that religiously. From when I was 10 years old, 11, 12, I'd put my headphones on, go down the dials, and then find the radio station that I would listen to the music that I would like to follow and find. And basically, right from the beginning of my life, I would say in my early days, I was always researching music to know what I was going to buy, what I was going to play and how I was going to play it. And then eventually, I became my father's son, the son of Cox, playing music to all of his friends in and around the area. So I uprooted myself and then took my dad's record box and the records, of course, and then plonked myself in the corner of someone else's house, and then be doing exactly the same thing at someone else's house. So I became very synonymous right from an early age of basically sharing the love of music.
That's amazing. What a story. And I was very curious about the meaning of your name, and it was almost serendipitous to find out that your name means free man. And as we know, in the early years, music gave you that freedom. So has the essence around that freedom in your life and the relationship with music stayed the same as your career has progressed?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, fantastic research. I never knew that my name stood for free man in such a way.
Oh, wow.
That's very subconscious, at the end of the day, to find out, that my name stood for so much, because I've always felt free in the ideal of sharing music. My music, and what I, in the end of the day, wanted to share, my style, not my dad's style of music, was always funk, was always soul, jazz, Latin jazz, and eventually into hip hop, and eventually into electronic dance music from the early 80s into where we are today. So that's a massive journey of music, of which I do share at the moment on Cabin Fever, which I basically do my vinyl sessions every Sunday, that you get to hear my life through vinyl and my correct collection. So for me, it's come around full circle. The end of the day, based on what I used to do back in the day with the vinyl, to where I am now, still sharing the love of that vinyl today. So my enthusiasm from the beginning of when I basically started to collect music, make enough money for me to go and buy my own records, to where I am now, I'm so happy to share my life in music through vinyl. I think what I'm doing now with Cabin Fever is the only thing I can do to represent myself for who I am. Because what I didn't really want people to feel, that, my whole integrity of my life as a DJ has only been about two things: techno music and Ibiza. It's like, okay, I get those two things, but I came from the school of music, musicians, bands, songs, songwriting, exposed to these elements of people who basically, for myself, that I got infused by listening to these bands, tracks that are arranged, guitar solos, violin pieces, all sorts of things that embodies my inimitable sound, to go deeper into my total existence of why I'm still here after all of these years. So it all comes from these humble beginnings to begin with.
Yeah, well, that's really, really interesting. And of course, what a different types of sounds that are being showcased in all of those genres, and then it kind of, not pinning you to that box of just techno and Ibiza is so important for your musical identity. And obviously I know you've got 150,000 records in your vinyl collection, so can only imagine just how interesting that must be when you're record digging and stuff. How much of a defining moment, this is going back towards the beginning of your career, was the grant that you received from the Prince's Trust back in the day?
Well, the thing was, back in the day, around about 1984, 85, I knew I wasn't going to become a radio DJ as such. I would do some pirate radio DJing, which is a lot of fun, but I knew it only kind of reached out to so many people You couldn't promote the fact that, Carl Cox is playing and he's on at this time of day, and because the police or whatever would just come and just find out aerials or whatever, just shut us down all the time, never to move. And pirate radio station, and I was involved in quite a few of them back in the day, is another story. Yeah. But it was one way of getting my music out there, how I felt about music, and that was just one avenue. But I feel that that for me, at the end of the day, it was always about how I kind of grab the essence of me being a DJ that was always kind of I was driven at the end of the day to represent myself as an individual. And the Princess Trust, it came up as an idea. The idea was, in any business, if you could match £1,000, or you could get £1,000, or if you had £1,000 worth of equipment that you would use for your business, whether you're a hairdresser, whether you're a chef, wherever business that you choose to profess in, then they would match what you put into your business, £1,000. Plus, you had to be on the dole. Plus, you had to take 13-week business course to be eligible for that £1,000. So I did all of that for 13 weeks. At the end of it, they said, right, okay, Carl, you have your certificate for passing the grant for the business trust. And I already had £1,000 worth of equipment that I've been basically working on collecting over the years as a semi-professional DJ at the beginning of my career, which was roughly around about 14 or 15 years old. So I really was, that's when I started collecting my sound and my lights and everything. So by that time, I had more than £1,000 of equipment by the time I got the grant, because I was around about 24, 25 years old. But it was something that really helped me, springboard my life as a mobile DJ. So this was the thing about me getting into, people understanding that I know that I have something that I know people do enjoy. And at that particular time, I just started to do school discos, friends' birthday parties, and doing weddings at the same time. And so every weekend I was always doing a party somewhere, some for big money, some for no money. But it's just the fact that I was out there doing it was enough for me to feel that it's possible that I could make a career out of this. So what happened in the end of the day, because at that particular time to get the money to be able to run my mobile disco, I was always working very hard as a labourer in the building companies. So my first big job was painting, decorating, and then I was a labourer for a bricklayer, a labourer for a plasterer, and then eventually I went into as a labourer for a scaffolding company, and then eventually I really enjoyed scaffolding, and to the point that I was basically running two scaffolding gangs, which allowed me then to supervise those gangs to turn the scaffolding company into a much bigger business. So I found out my skill set for labouring was one thing, but my drive to create a company and to make it bigger was something else. So as long as I could get a good workforce together, I could build that up. So what I did was, eventually, when I had this crossroads around about 1985, this happened, the Princess Trust came along for me to feel that I could cross over. So leave the scaffolding behind and then go and pursue my life as a mobile self-employed DJ. Now that was very scary to do that, because I was earning something like £400 or £500 a week at that particular time as a scaffolder, working very, very hard, mind you, to be able to do what I did, to eventually earning £50 a week DJ, because we were never seen as a cottage industry as a whole. It was just something that we did as a hobby, but I took it a lot more seriously than that. So what I did was, I used to get like 2 or 3 bookings a week through the Yellow Pages. Now I put some of that money into the Yellow Pages for advertising, and I had this business card saying Astral Disco, the best in soul, funk, and disco music, and specializing in birthday parties, weddings, blah, 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 right? And I had it, and I had a white card, very shiny, and blue light writing on it. Now, I've always been into the future and into the stars and that sort of stuff. And Astral basically it was all about that. But what it was, because I've got quite sensitive skin, they had a cream that my mum used to get for me called Astral Cream. So I was thinking to myself, what name can I have for my disco? Astral Disco. And I thought, there you go. And I would love for you to see this card in the, if I still have them. I don't know, it may be somewhere around, but that was the very thing that kick-started me as a DJ, and to feel that I had confidence enough to be able to pursue that. But what I did was, in the job center, I then decided that I can't do 2 or 3 jobs a night. So I would go out in the job center and then ask for would-be mobile DJs to come so I can basically vet them to see if there's any good to take my place as a DJ in what people are asking for. I know everyone wanted me at the time, but I couldn't do what I 2 or 3 at a particular time. So I wanted someone to go and represent me in that way. So I would basically sit there, and they will come to my house and they will be like, okay, so here's my gear, show me what you can do. And some DJs were absolutely terrible, and I'd be crying if I picked that DJ and they'd be playing at my wedding. I'd be like, oh my God, it's rubbish. And some were really good, really good on the mic, very fresh, played good sound, had a good sound system and that sort of stuff. So eventually, what happened here, I would go out and do a booking on that night and run maybe 2 or 3 other mobile discos, which would be under my Astral Disco banner. But then people believed that I wouldn't give you these DJs if I didn't think they were any good. So therefore, I would book them on that basis. And this was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I had 5 DJs and then 8 mobile discos on one night. So I would take a percentage from the booking because I got the booking for them, and then they'll be out there DJing. So for me, this was like, this is great. It's not exactly what I want to be doing, but it was something that I knew that I could basically help other people, get work and that kind of thing. So I became the catalyst for getting mobile DJs work. No one else, I guarantee, no one else ever did that for anybody else, based on what I was getting as attention. So for me, this is great, but I had to kind of let that go so I could pursue my own DJing career, which is a bit of a shame, really. I left it with another guy to run, and hopefully he may be still running it now. I don't know, but it did work at that particular time. But I've always, the thing is, as a self-employed DJ, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So you have to market yourself. Don't forget, we did at that particular time. There was no internet. Nada. You had to physically go out there and put your cards in pubs, in cafeterias, taxi ranks, telephone boxes, whatever you could do to get your name out there. That is how you did it. And then reputation. If you did a really good job and people were like, wow, you're great, mate, I like you. What's your name again? Carl Cox. Oh, okay. I'll tell my friend about you and and I'll do that friend's party, and that friend would tell that friend. So I was actually getting a lot of work just through association, not even just through marketing. It's just that if you do a good job, that's what happens. So, and I've always said you're only as good as your last job. So if you did a shitty job, that's your last job. End of story.
Yeah, well, that is really interesting. One of the things that hasn't changed throughout the years, particularly for let's say up and coming DJs or people in the industry in the beginning, is not being able to predict an income stream and having that sort of reliance on you're only as good as your last gig. And yeah, this Yellow Pages thing sounds incredible. I would love to see a copy of that, and I hope you still have it, because that is just a piece of history right there. And also just, there is definitely a return, obviously, on the investment from the side of the grant. And I love the fact that it wasn't just, handed over. There was this whole business course that you had to go on. That's so great in terms of, trying to transcend it and come up with different ideas. So moving into the next sort of part of the interview, a lot of people don't know that you had to make a kind of serious decision between music and motorsports back in the day. Apart from the pure cost of going racing, what made you choose music, and which came first in your life?
Well, the thing was, I was in the beginning of my career as such. all of the music all the money that I made at that particular time went back into my equipment, went back into buying records, of course. The van that I had and the cars that I had to transport my equipment, it just went into this. But I was also drag racing my cars, and the cars that I had were really like old pieces of shit cars that I would kind of take to Santa Pod Raceway, and it used to do a thing there called the thing that it was called Run What You Brung, and I used to take like anything up there and just try and get down that blacktop as hard and fast as I could. But every time I went down there, I kept breaking something, back axles, the gearboxes, my big ends would go with something. Every time I went, and I just thought, this is really expensive. This isn't working, So I just thought, well, I'll get back to that at some point. But I was always watching World of Sport on every Saturday morning, rallying, MotoGP, World Superbikes, sidecar racing, Isle of Man TT, anything that was like, phew, I would, land speed record, whoosh, I'd be watching it with just like awe. I knew I'd never become a racer as such in that realm, like rally. What scared me about rallying was a friend of mine in Wallington, and he had this awesome red Mark 1 Escort with a awesome 1600 cross-flow engine with twin 40 Webers and everything, and it just sounded bloody awesome. Bubble arches, big wheel tires, and he said, "Carl, I'm gonna go test my car in the woods. You want to come along?" I said, "Yeah, no worries." So I jumped in the car, and he's like, "Whoa, missing trees over the jumps." It scared the life out of me to know that the one thing I'm never going to do in my life was rallying. All you see is trees going past and stuff. I literally had my hands in my eyes just going, no. I wasn't into that. But I do like going around the circuits, Brands Hatch, Donington. Give me any circuit. I really, really enjoy that in cars and also motorbikes as well. I do track days on whatever bike that I choose to ride. I really enjoy it. I don't have the rider's eye for motorbike riding. I do have a driver's eye for racing. But my profession, even now today, I'm a professional drag racer. I've had my license now for about 8 years, and the car that I'm kind of racing at the moment now is called a Pro Mod from the States. It's over 5,000 horsepower Hemi, and the fastest I've been down the strip now is 6.1 seconds at 234 miles an hour. And you can see this on YouTube. You just go on there, go Carl Cox Mustang Pro Mod, and you can see me whoosh going down. Now, many people don't know that I actually do race these cars, but I've been doing it for a long time. But the thing is about getting to it now is I can afford to do it now. I just couldn't afford to do it then. So if I could afford to do it earlier in my life, would I've taken up drag racing or professionally and in a DJ and not so much? And probably the answer to that is what you see now. Me as a DJ, obviously, got to the top and stayed at the top for many, many years. Me as a drag racer now, I have to basically now get into as much as I can before it's too late for me. But right now, I'm just getting into the realm of professional drag racing, and you'll see more and more of my cars as we go along through Colcott's Motorsports. So it was just timing in the end of the day. But what the great story is at Santa Pod Raceway is where I cut my teeth for drag racing to be able to do what I'm doing now, know what it's like to be out there. But I think the fastest I went at that time in a Mark 1 Ford Capri, which I have here in Australia and also here in Australia, was I think something like 19 or 18 seconds at like 79 miles an hour, 82 miles an hour and a quarter mile. So it's considered very, very slow these days. But for me at that time, it was considered very, very quick.
Hey you, we hope you're enjoying today's episode. We're on a serious mission here to create one of the world's best podcast series, and we'd be so grateful if you could support us in any way by becoming a patron of the show. There's a tier to suit every level, from early bird tiers where you get downloads to all my music with some super cool ninja stickers, to our VIP Mission Maker tiers where you get epic rewards like exclusive footage that never gets aired, the chance to submit questions to our guests with signed copies of books from them, DJ lessons, one-to-one coaching, and a whole load of super cool Ninja and Mission Maker merchandise. You can start supporting us for less than what it costs you to fill up your car for a month by simply heading over to www.patreon.com/missionmakers. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. It is much scarier being a passenger in any scenario, I think, in racing. Like, I actually really get so nervous when I sit with other people. But yeah, I have no problem in going, super fast myself. And I've seen the videos on YouTube. They look absolutely amazing. So I recommend people check that out, because there is some phenomenal stuff there. And you see parachutes and all these crazy things going off. Nuts, just nuts. So it is and also just actually one thing I just wanted to add there was that at the end of the day, right, like you've transcended millions of people's lives through music, and that is just, if you have that gift, what a privilege to be able to touch so many people in that way. And it's a hard decision to make, but there's also, I think, something within that about purpose and why you think you might be here and things like that. So it's kind of well known that the arena of the music industry is highly political, and it rarely escapes any artist, any industry professional, no matter what stage they're at. So what would your advice be to artists and professionals who have to face these tough mental minefields? How have you stayed resilient during this 4 decades that you've had in the music industry?
I think what it is for me more than anything else is the way how I grew up in the scene. There was no template for success. There was no template for making music. There was no template for how to make a party or run a party. It was just how you felt at the time by whatever you felt that you could basically give. It's all about giving. It was never about taking at all. And for me, it's never about taking. And I've always said to myself, if I get paid to do anything, it's an absolute bonus. Thank you very much. If you've enjoyed yourself and you want to show me some gratitude by paying me, and then thank you. I mean, it's the same for race car drivers, it's the same for horse racers, it's the same for tennis players, it's the same for any professional. Footballers get 10 times more money than God. But if he kicks that goal the ball in the goal at that particular time, and you paid your season ticket subscription, and that's all you want to see happen, you're more than happy to go, that's why I pay my season ticket. So for me, the drive has never been about what I can get out of it. It's what I can give to it, to what I get out of it. And I think that's, if there's a secret to success for me, I think it's always been about that, because I've never chased anything. I remember going to a seminar a few years ago. This was in Miami, and I was sat there with some top EDM DJs at the time, and they were talking about chart success, and especially in Beatport. And I'm just sitting there, I've had chart success with some records I put out, but I've never chased chart success. It just happened because I was there at the time, and the record that I had made became very popular, and I was very happy with that. At the end of the day, but I knew my second record wouldn't be as big as the first one. I knew my album would be seminal, but I knew that it would be my opportunity to show people my scope of my music. But I never chased anything. I just made an embodiment of tracks which represented me. And then I had a deal with a company called Edo Records from Germany that took up the option of my music. So I put out 2 albums with them. And then my third album, I basically put out on my own independent record label called Intech Records, which is all roads leads to the dance floor. But meanwhile, I've always kind of like just felt that it's difficult mentally if you're chasing something. And if you don't get there, you feel like a failure, or you feel like you could have done something different, or it feels like that maybe people don't like you, or it's not the sound of now, or this sort of. I'm like, forget about all of it. The fact that you've done something, you created something, and it's yours, he or she, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, that's a success. Because there's a lot of people out there that are not doing what you're doing in any way, shape, or form. So if you do become successful by it, then great. You've done something that people really enjoy. And it's not a commercial sellout on anything. It's just that it doesn't matter. It worked, and that's it. And I found when these DJs were talking at the music seminar, they were upset with themselves because they didn't get a number 1 spot. They got number 4, number 3, or number 2. I was like, really? You're upset because you know you didn't get to number one, and number four and number three not good enough. And for them, it wasn't. They had to be number one. So if you got like 20 DJs who all want to be number one, then you're going to have 19 people very upset with themselves because they didn't make it. So therefore, they make another record to see if it works, make another record to see if it works. And so if that doesn't work, there's more pain, more mental pain doesn't happen. And that's really difficult because there's people out there who are trying to make it, trying to find out where they are. If you're trying to make drum and bass and you want to try and be like Andy C, well, yeah, great. But Andy C's already there. If you want to try and be like Tiesto, that's great. But Tiesto's already there. And the list just keeps going on and on and on. So whatever you do, you have to do because you love it, you enjoy it, and that makes you who you are, no matter what success you're looking for. The success will only come if you just continue to do what you do and be happy by it. You just have to be happy. That's your strength, to be happy. Because if you're upset and unhappy by it, it makes your life a lot more difficult to be understood based on what you're trying to achieve. And for me, I've never, ever chased anything. I've just done it because it felt right for me to do what I'm doing. It's the reason why I play drum and bass, hard techno, funk, soul, Latin jazz, call it what you like. You know, at the end of the day, I would be sharing it with the utmost passion because it just feels right for me to do it at that particular time. Of course, I'm not going to play drum and bass if it's a techno crowd. I'm not going to play techno crowd to a drum and bass crowd. But as a DJ, you know, I have the nuance to be able to understand and to see how this party is going to go and how it's going to end up. And people trust me to play the music that makes sense to them as the reason why they bought their ticket or they're there at a particular time. I've had to win over so many people, so many times, all of the time. Even today, it's just incredible. But what keeps me basically mentally sane is that I know that the music that I'm sharing is the best you're going to hear. I believe that. You know, whether it's soul music, the best you're going to hear. Hip hop, the best you're going to hear. Techno music from you know, real techno music or whatever, the best you're going to hear. And that for me is what gives me my strength to continue to do what I'm doing. Whether I'm number 1, 20, 200, my records don't even hit the charts, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's the fact that I'm doing it and I will continue to do it, makes me feel in a whole knowing that's what makes me who I am.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really, really true. And that, you know, you need to stay grounded and rooted to that anchor point of really believing in what you do. Otherwise, you lose your authenticity if you chase that popularity to get to a certain benchmark, you know, and then, you know, you get there and what happens next, you know. And I always feel like the goalpost, the journey towards it is far more, you know, fulfilling than actually getting there. And, you know, because the next day you wake up, it's something else, you know. So definitely some really wise words there for staying grounded in the face of success and you know and how to navigate in these sort of highly political arenas. Nikola Tesla once said, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency and vibration. And it's very interesting how this philosophy could apply to successful DJs like yourself, who clearly have this innate ability to navigate the energy, frequencies and vibrations of a space. And you alluded to it just there where, you know, you have to always prove to your audience that you can take them on this journey. Every time that the dance floor is different and they have a different energy. So when you're at the controls, how do you kind of read the energy of what's going on, particularly in bigger spaces where there is less intimacy between yourself and the crowd?
The thing is, my growing up of sharing the love of music really started off in my bedroom with a couple of mates. You know, I buy these new records, and my mates would be in my bedroom listening to the music, and I put the record on, and I'd be like, okay, I bought this new record by Chic, Good Times. What do you think? And they'd be like, you know, Good Times, and they'd be dancing to it, and they'd be, yeah, it's a great tune, Carl. Thank you, because when I bought it, I knew it was a great tune. Now, I know it may not be everyone's cup of tea, but for myself, I can't kind of have an ear for music. And because I was actually, I was a punter before I was a DJ. I would DJ at home with my friends playing music and maybe, you know, a birthday party from a friend's house. And that's the only thing I'll be doing at that particular time. But I was always going to clubs. I was running on the dance floor, listening to this music. So I know what it's like to be a punter. I know what it's like to be a clubber. I know what it's like to go and hear a DJ play the music that you want to play. I know what it's like to be, have that euphoria when you hear a record and you just go, wow, and you look around and everyone's dancing and jumping and going crazy. I know what it's like to be out there. So when I'm DJing now, I transcend what I know what it's like to be on that dance floor. Back to myself. I'm so kind of gutted that if there was two Carl Coxes, one that could play the music to Carl Cox that's dancing to the music back, that would be just euphoric for me. But I have to transcend myself to the dance floor, and then what would I want? What would I like to hear? What mix would I like to feel coming in? What track would my favorite track? Is it coming in now, or is it? Yeah, it's there. All these kind of elements. It's something of which you really have to feel. I never ever plan a set at any point in my life because it just isn't worth doing. Because if you plan a set and a track that you put in doesn't work and you have to carry on because the next record you've already planned based on that you're losing the dance floor or the interest of the public, that's a really tough place to be. So you have to think on your feet really quickly. The next record. I'm always kind of 2 or 3 records ahead of my sets because I'm thinking if I'm playing this record and the next one is kind of like what I'm thinking, but maybe they're not ready for that one yet, and I'm going to play this one, and then I'm going to play that one that wasn't ready for them yet later. They're going to get it because I know it's a good tune, but some records could be too future for people. Some people it could be too heavy at a particular time or not hard enough. But you have to always kind of juggle the idea of how your music is going to be accepted. And I think the only way that you can really get to understand that is if you are a punter first, you're on the dance floor. I mean, there's a lot of DJs that just DJ, never been on the dance floor, just DJ. And they've already got their mates behind them, bigging them up. And yeah, go on, you're great. Okay, yeah, I'm great, but the dance floor's not moving. It's like, and the reason why it's not moving because you're not having an understanding of the dance floor. You're not having an understanding of where you're putting your music at this particular time, and it's only because of I would say it's a talent. It's you have to grow into this, and I didn't grow into this knowing exactly what to do. It took me years to get to a point where I can walk away knowing that I did a great set and I kept an audience captive for that moment in time. I mean, a lot of DJs these days now, have a planned set of 1.5 hours to 2 hours, and that's it. I was always playing at least minimum 8 to 9 hours every time I played. Or I would play from beginning to end every single time. It was normal for me to do that. It was abnormal for me to be playing just a 1 or 2 hour set. So, you have to go on that journey, no matter what. If you're going to have people captivated to you the whole time, and then that's what it is. So when I did my space set in 2016, and it was 10 hours, it's 10 hours. So, and I had no plan. I just had, I said, I'm going to play half of it in vinyl and the other half of that digitally. And it's our night. Here we go. But I could only do that if I had done that before or had grown into it, because I'm guaranteed that a lot of DJs wouldn't do it, or they'd have it planned in the sense of where it would start and where they would end up. And they'd be stressing because if you plan your set and it doesn't quite work out, you got to change it up into something else. So my plan was with that 10-hour set was to not go too overboard with the BPMs, but play all classic records that made the club over the many years, and hold them. So I started at 10 o'clock at night, and I held them all the way 124 BPM, all the way to about 3 o'clock. And then when 3 o'clock in the morning came, and then from 3 until 8, and then it went 124, 125, and sped it all the way up to about 130. And then by the end of the night, it's like, yes. So if you was there at the beginning, it was a different style of set. If you got there halfway through, it was something else. If you went there the journey from 3 until 8, then that was something else. And that's your journey. And that, again, that's on YouTube if you choose to watch it and listen to it. But, that was my schooling. It's the only way how I could justify myself by, the idea of how to basically fit into the realm of being a DJ. Me being a punter first really, really helped me, for sure, to understand the dance floor.
100%. I mean, observation, the art of observation is phenomenal, and to feel frequencies and to hear it on different sound systems, different environments, is an absolute must. And also, I think there's something within there that you mentioned about, obviously playing really long sets, having that fluidity then to take that, in any environment, but also within those, all those hours, they're not going to be all peak sets. There's going to be a lot of warming up. And I think, DJs need to know how to warm up an environment, because you can't always have it at its peak. And that's never always going to be your role either. Definitely very, very interesting. And talking about, the relationship with space and the legendary 16-year residency that you had. It's been, almost 5 years. How do you sort of reflect on the opportunities that new beginnings present, and almost the unstoppable power of letting go?
Yeah, I mean, I had a residency in London and Charing Cross in 1996, 97 to 2000 to the year 2000, with Jim Masters and Trevor Rockcliffe at that particular time, called Velvet Underground, and the night was called Ultimate Bass. So this was a club for like 230 people every Thursday, and it was amazing. We had some of the best DJs play the best music down there, and every week was just very special. So I know what it was like to have a residency in a club. When I had the opportunity to uproot from going to London to Ibiza to start a new club night on the island, I mean, I was always going to the island from 1985 every year until I was able to find a home for me in some ways. I had every time I played, I got the opportunity to play in San Antonio, the clubs there at that particular time, and then to play Amnesia, and then to play Pasha, Coup Club, which is privileged now, and then eventually when space opened up, I had an opportunity to basically just do the opening parties there and the closing parties until I eventually ended up with my own residency, which started in 2001. Now, that club, basically, the space was never a nightclub. It was always a daytime club. It was always an after-hours daytime club. So my night was absolutely created from absolutely nothing at all. And it started on our first year was on a Thursday, and we had a lot of competition on a Thursday. So I decided that Tuesday was going to be a better time to do it when there's less competition, but then there's also less people going out. So can you imagine the success of that club at the end? Was phenomenal, because I felt that we're going to give it 5 years to see how it was going to really go for me. And then when the 5th year came, the anniversary, it was just sublime. And then Pepe, the owner of the club, decides that he wanted to make the club bigger, more defined, more people. Are like, Christ, we've just managed to fill the club up, and now you want to make it bigger again. So we diversed a lot of the rooms, which we did. And but I was always making sure that the discotheque was the Carl Cox room, the church, for me at the end of the day. And so we went into year 6, year 7, bigger, year 8, bigger, 9. I'm thinking, okay, 10 years, thanks very much. You've been lovely. And we'll move on. And when we got to 10 years, the club was just biblical. It's epic. People coming from all over the world. It was, people were like, you haven't been to the island until you've been to Carl Cox's night and a Tuesday night space. I'm like, wow, it's becoming legendary. But it's 10 years, that's incredible. So, year 11, I thought, okay, it will tail off. No, more people, more legendary. Year 12, 13, 14. I'm like, how many years am I supposed to be going to be DJing in this place? 15. And then we were told that the club, we're going to lose the club by 2016, purely based on ownership of the club, and the lease, belonged to another family on the island called Matuta's family, and then Pepe had to basically give up that lease back to them family, which reverted back to them, and that's the only reason why the club went down. And for me, space was my whole essence on that island. At the end of the day, you couldn't just say space without Carl Cox, or Carl Cox without space, or Carl Cox without Ibiza, without space. That was the connection. It was like, if it was still going today, I'll still be there now, going into year 22 or something stupid. But, it was how it was. It was an understood situation between me, the people, the dance floor, and the island, and that was taken away from us by 2016. So you can imagine it's a very sad day for everybody to see that happen in the way that it had been, and it was very hard to come back from it because we never really had an opportunity to find another space to continue the legacy of space, and for me it was very difficult to find a club that had that essence apart from what we did at Privilege, which was amazing because people followed what we could create and continue on that island based on my popularity and my team around me at that time, which was just phenomenal. We were our PR team and management team and everyone around us was just on point. They knew how to make a party really happen and market that party based on still giving people the best time in a club on that island. But then, things just started to change. The internet and the social media, it's just started to change the island anyway. You could see that there was another flow happening on that island. And so for me, I'm just thinking, well, maybe it's a good time for me to just leave that legacy right where it is and not try and create another space on that island and just leave it where it is. If you didn't go and you wasn't there before, and then you missed out on some of the best years in clubbing history ever. That club space didn't get all its accolades because it was just a nice club. It got those accolades because it was the number one club in the world for years, and I was a big part of that structure and also that success.
100%. I've had some incredible nights. I've been lucky enough to see you at Space quite a few times, and anybody who's there just knows, Carl Cox Space Tuesday nights, nothing more needs to be said really. Just get on a plane and be there. It's not every day that you get to meet your childhood heroes, let alone sit down with them for so long. So I have to say a huge thanks to Carl for being an absolute legend and also for being so open and honest with us. From sharing what success truly means to him and how he stayed so grounded to the incredible journey of Space Ibiza, I hope it's left you excited for what's to come in part 2, where we'll be diving deeper into the journey behind his love of motorsport, the values that drive him as a leader, and the non-negotiable habits that he deploys to being able to succeed as both a DJ and a drag racer. Part 2 will be out this time next Wednesday, so stay tuned, don't forget to subscribe, and thank you again for listening. Have an awesome week.